One year at NYU Law right now costs over $123,000. That's not just the tuition, of course, that's the number NYU itself publishes as the all in cost, including tuition, fees, rent, food, the whole shebang for just one of 3 years of law school. Now, here's the thing most people haven't realized yet. On July 1st, the way almost every law student has paid that number for the last 20 years quietly ends. The cost, of course, is not going anywhere, but what ends is who is giving you the money to pay that cost. Now, there is a second thing, and that's what I want you to actually think about. The LSAT score you're grinding for right now, the one that hasn't changed at all, just became the most valuable thing you own, more valuable than it was a year ago, and I'm going to show you exactly why. But let me back up first, of course. For almost 20 years, the federal government did something almost most people never even thought about. If you got into a graduate or a professional program, the government would lend you the entire cost of attendance, no matter whatever the school charged, with no real cap, no credit check that mattered. The program was called Grad Plus, and it worked like a blank check. Now, think about what a blank check does to a school. If every student who walks in the door can borrow whatever you decide to charge, what stops you from charging more? Nothing, of course. And that is the argument economists have made for years. When the lender will cover any price, the price goes up. And law school tuition went up and up and up year after year with almost nobody pushing back. And so we ended up here, where one year at a top law school is over 120 grand. Almost nobody even blinked at the price because the money was always there to borrow. But that blank check is getting torn up. It is ending. Last year, in July of 2025, Trump passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, and buried inside it was the biggest change to graduate borrowing in a generation. And the date it kicks in is July 1st of this year, 2026. That's basically right now, depending on when you're watching this. So Grad Plus, the blank check is going to be gone for new borrowers. In its place, you're going to have hard caps on what you can borrow, and law students get dropped into a very specific bucket. The law treats a JD like a professional degree, similar to medicine. So a new law student can borrow $50,000 a year from the federal government. That is the ceiling, with a lifetime limit of $200,000 across the whole degree. And you can see this right now on the financial aid page of nearly any law school in the country. UC Law San Francisco lays it out in plain English. JD students are professional students, 50 grand a year. Grad Plus is gone for anyone who hasn't already borrowed. And so let's do the math, because that's what matters, right? These are real numbers, big money. NYU all in, $123,000 a year. 3 years of that approaches about $370,000. But the most the federal government will hand out to a new law student is 50 grand a year over 3 years, only $150,000. So 370K in cost minus 150K in federal loans, that leaves a gap more than $200,000 at the priciest schools per student, with no federal money left to fill that in. That gap right there could be a house down payment in most of the country. It's a paid off mortgage somewhere cheaper. It's the difference between starting your law degree clean and starting it with a hole so deep the government won't even stand behind it anymore. So if you're wondering, I'm already in law school, is this going to affect me? Probably not, because there is a legacy rule you're grandfathered in. If you're already started off with the borrowing, you can keep borrowing the old way up to the full cost through the middle of 2029 or until you finish, whichever comes first. So if you're a current student, you're probably grandfathered in. But if you're applying to law school right now, if you're taking the LSAT this summer or fall, if you're aiming for a seat for next year, you are a brand new borrower. And law school deans are also on the hook for this because they're going to be affected too. For 20 years, the law school's budget leaned on the assumption that any student they could admit could borrow whatever the school charged them. And that assumption is done. And so now the school is in a tough position. They can cut the price by giving more scholarship money, or they can watch the students it admitted shrug and walk somewhere else to a school that pays them scholarship money. Schools, of course, hate cutting their prices, but they also hate having empty seats, especially if they are tuition dependent. And not every school is getting impacted the same way, of course, because the rich schools, the ones that have billion-dollar endowments, they can absorb the hit. They'll discount tuition a bit and move on. But the ones I would watch closely are in the middle and below. where they have a high sticker price, a very small endowment, and the class was borrowing the full cost of tuition. Those schools can't knock tens of thousands of dollars off the tuition without bleeding, without hurting, without taking a hit to their bottom line. And so some of those schools are going to shrink. A few might just not make it at all. They might end up shutting down or consolidating, merging. I'm not going to name names here, but I can tell you that when the easy money disappears, the fragile schools crack first. So when you pick a school now, your considerations beyond price should be whether the school will still be standing in 5 years. So the system just handed you leverage. If you see it, you can negotiate your tuition because the school is more desperate than you are. The school needs you more than you need them. And that's why your LSAT score just got more valuable, even though the content of the LSAT has not changed. You can go for tuition, or you can take out discounts, or you could take private loans. Private loans are a big problem, though, because, of course, they take high interest rates and they don't have income-driven repayment the way that public or government loans do. You don't get public service loan forgiveness on a private loan. And so what you want to do instead is get money from the school in the form of scholarships. Law schools live and die by their place in the U.S. News rankings, which factors in their median LSAT score. U.S. News weighs the median LSAT score heavily, and every year, admissions fights like crazy to push that median up even by a single point. So a school that's at a 168 median will straight up pay an applicant with a 172 median to enroll because that one applicant tugs the median upward. If you are above a school's 75th percentile, you're not a charity case anymore. You become a metric they need to hit. They need you to help raise their medians, to help raise their standing in the U.S. News rankings. And so that same LSAT score that a year ago might have just gotten you in now decides whether the school writes you a check or whether you signed for 200 grand of private debt. And timing also matters here. Law school applications jumped up year over year for 2 consecutive years, the highest in over a decade, and that's LSAC's count, not mine. More than 100 law schools saw their applications climb 20% or more in a single year. So there are more people chasing law school than there have been in a generation, all competing for that same pot of scholarship money at the exact same moment the federal blank check disappears, and that scholarship money becomes the main way for you to dodge the private loan trap. So there's more competition, less easy money. In that environment, the people who win the scholarships are the ones with the LSAT score flat out. And so for every school on your list, I want you to write down what I would call your gap number. You take your full all-in cost of attendance for all 3 years of law school, subtract $150,000, which is what you can borrow from the government. What's left, that difference, is your gap number. That's the hole you personally have to fill. Then you want to see which law schools will give you scholarship money to cover that gap fully. It's going to be based on your getting an LSAT score and a GPA, ideally both, above the 75th percentile of the law schools that you're targeting. Not just the median, the 75th percentile. And if your GPA is below the median or below the 75th, you want to offset that with a higher LSAT score to compensate. And if you've taken the LSAT and didn't hit that number, you can retake. Law schools do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take into consideration the highest LSAT score on your record, and there's no downside to retaking for that reason. The LSAT's offered 8 times a year. Coming up, we've got August, September, October, November. You can take any one of those LSATs and still apply to law school this fall. Even the LSAT in January or February is not too late. But applying earlier is better than applying later, all else being equal. When you apply earlier, it's easier to get in, and there's also more scholarship money available. And if you want my help getting your LSAT score up, getting above those medians, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering a free LSAT tutoring lesson for everybody watching this, now or later. You can book that free tutoring lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. You can grab that free cheat sheet at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. The link is below the video, pinned in the chat, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. Happy to help you out. That cheat sheet's a great quick reference on everything logical reasoning and reading comprehension. It's a free PDF download you can grab in my bio and in the video below. Now, I see questions here in the chat. I will get to as many of those as I can. Anything at all, LSAT and law school admissions, happy to help. I see M24631 is asking, is a 3.39 GPA bad? Well, I will say this, there is a lot of grade inflation, and so I wouldn't say it's a fantastic GPA, but when we talk about a GPA being good or good or bad, it's all relative to what? Relative to the medians of the law schools that you are targeting. That's what really matters, right? And so when you look at a given law school and you want to say to yourself, how likely am I to get in? You want to look at what's their LSAT median, what's their GPA median. If you're below on one median, you want to be above on the other median. And if you're below on the GPA median, then of course your answer is clear. Focus on getting your LSAT score up. If you're below on the LSAT median and above on the GPA median, you're in a good place on the GPA, which is great because it's hard to redo all of undergrad, of course. Your GPA is what it is if you're late in college or already graduated, but your LSAT score you can retake. And law schools don't take the average of multiples, and so there's really no downside to retaking the LSAT. If you do better, great, you've got a higher score. If you do worse, no big deal. The previous higher score still stands. JJ is asking, I took the June LSAT and I'm taking it again in September. If I know I'll do better, should I throw away the June score or leave it? The truth is it doesn't really matter because law schools don't average multiple scores. So cancellations of your score are really a relic from over 20 years ago, back when law schools did average multiple scores, but since they no longer do, doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter whether you cancel the score or not. I would say safest course of action is just keep the score. That way you've actually got a number on your record. But of course, know that you can improve significantly. You can do better. Won't be a big deal to have the lower score on record, though. If you cancel the score, law schools will, of course, assume that it didn't go well, because if it had gone well, you wouldn't have canceled it in the first place, right? I see Nikki says they got a 2.5 GPA, 171 LSAT. That's a super splitter right there. For those who aren't aware, a super splitter or a splitter is someone with a low GPA, high LSAT. Super just means your GPA is super low relative to a relatively higher LSAT score. The good news is that law schools love splitters. They actually weigh your LSAT score more heavily than your undergraduate GPA, and there are a lot of reasons for that, the biggest being that GPA inflation, grade inflation is out of control. There's LSAT score inflation as well, of course, but GPA inflation is even worse, and GPAs are kind of an apples to oranges comparison, in part because humanities majors have more grade inflation than STEM majors do, of course, who don't really have any grade inflation or very little of it. And of course, some folks did engineering, others did sociology. One major has a higher GPA than others, and you can guess which one that is. There's also recency effect as well, right? So some folks are still in undergrad applying straight to law school. Others went to undergrad 20 years ago, and their GPA would not really be a good reflection of what they're capable of today. So that's why law schools, in short, weigh your LSAT more heavily than your GPA in virtually every case. Just scanning through for more questions here. I know I might have missed some here. Armin's asking, how high are we talking? I'm going to assume at least a 170 LSAT score is needed to bury a bad GPA. Am I right? It all depends, right? I mean, define what is a bad GPA, and then to bury it at what school. Different law schools have different requirements in terms of what you need to get in. And so if you want the best law schools, if you want to get into the best possible law schools, I would recommend that you get an LSAT score above a 175. For those who aren't aware, the top 14 law school LSAT medians range from 170 to 174 or so. The GPA medians for the top 14 range from 392 to 399. And so if you're below a 392 on the GPA, you want to be above a 174 on the LSAT to compensate. And of course, there's variation within the different law schools. I can't say exactly what score you would need for any specific school overall. You can look up the data yourself, though. In the American Bar Association 509 reports, they will show you a given law school's LSAT median, their GPA median as well, and that'll give you a sense of what you might need to get in. Of course, you want to exceed those numbers, and those numbers are a trailing metric of last year, which of course law schools always want to exceed. You've also got the fact that if you want scholarship money or you want to maximize your odds of acceptance, it's not just about hitting the medians, it's about hitting those 75th percentiles to maximize your odds of admission, because you don't want to just get in. You also want to have numbers that are impressive enough and high enough that they would incentivize the school to actually give you scholarship money if that's something that you're looking for. Faye is asking, The school's median I'm targeting is a 159. My GPA is a 3.1. How high should I aim for the LSAT? Well, the piece of information that you didn't share with me that's important, Faye, is what is the school's GPA median? You said your GPA is a 3.1. How does that compare to their GPA median? I need to know that comparison to know whether you're above or below their median. My guess would be that due to GPA inflation, you're probably below their median. And so if you are below their median, you're saying it's a 3.6. Okay, so you're at a 3.1. Their median's a 3.6. You're 0.5 below, which is pretty significant, to be frank. If their LSAT median's a 159, you probably want a 170 plus. I'm just spitballing here, of course, though. What you could do, aside from looking at the medians, is also look at user-submitted data on a website like Law School Decisions or Law School Data. Applicants put in their numbers and their admissions outcomes, and that can give you a sense of what you're likely to experience based on what others have experienced in the past. I see, Faye, you're saying your undergrad was STEM. Okay, so that's some useful context as well, of course, right? Because it's harder to get a high GPA in STEM than it is to get a high GPA in the humanities. So that's useful context for law schools to see. The thing, though, is that law schools are not incentivized to care what you majored in, even though they should, of course, because they're not evaluated based on that metric. In other words, US News and the ABA do not distinguish between someone who got a 3.1 in STEM versus a 3.1 in sociology. So for that reason, you're effectively getting penalized for having majored in something more difficult. It's unfortunate, it's not fair, but them's the breaks. You just got to get a higher LSAT score to compensate. And so I'd say you probably want to have something in the 170 range given the lower GPA. But in terms of what should you shoot for, always shoot for a 180. Why aim for anything less? I see Brett saying I've got a 3.9. What LSAT score should I aim for? I was thinking 170. I mean, why not aim for 180 though? Why would you only aim for a 170, which is still, of course, a good score. It's top 4% or so, but a higher score will get you better outcomes. And if you want a T14 law school or you want to get a full ride somewhere, having above a 170 can help you that much more. See, your mother says, hey man, I used to watch your videos 6 years ago. Now I'm a barred attorney working my dream job. You came up on my page randomly and I remembered you. I repeat your advice to others now. Awesome. I'm really glad to hear it. Congrats on your success. That's great. Adam's asking, how will my application look going from a first-year med student to law? Cool. I mean, you're unique. That stands out. A lot of folks don't have that background. So if you do, that'll be nice to have. And law schools like folks who have STEM backgrounds because they're more likely to get employment if you have that STEM background. And law schools are partially evaluated based on employment outcomes for their graduates. And so if you're able to get work more easily as a patent attorney, for example, with a STEM background, having experience in science, that could be helpful. Not saying you're going to necessarily go that route, of course, but it's nice to have. Eli's asking, any insight on waitlists this cycle? I'm on at U of San Diego and SMU has been quiet. Yeah, waitlist movement is really, really slow this cycle. This is one of the most competitive cycles ever. And unfortunately, because of this surge in applicants, there are more delays in law schools getting back to folks. So you might have to wait a long time, even though it's already mid-June. You might have to wait longer just to hear back, and law schools hold the cards. And so you may get off the wait list last second. You might not, hard to say. The one thing that you can do, though, is you can submit a letter of continued interest, reiterating your interest in a particular law school. You say, hey, such and such law school, you're still my top choice. If I get in, I will go to your school. Here's an update on what I've been up to since we last spoke. I got this award at work. I got this honor. I got this promotion. I retook the LSAT and got a higher score. All of that can help. Noah's asking, does every cycle just get more and more competitive? Not forever. It goes up and it goes down. The past couple of years have been up, though, for a couple of reasons. One is economic stagnation when the job market's bad, especially for recent college graduates. More folks go into law school to improve their employability and wait out a bad economy. And with, of course, AI disrupting entry-level jobs, we will probably continue to see more folks go into graduate school to increase their employability. Additionally, when the political situation is a bit tumultuous, that also gets folks more politically engaged, wanting to go to law school to help change the system. And Given that we're in yet another Trump administration where things are contentious and volatile, that also leads more folks to want to change the system and go to law school to fight for what they want to improve. And so that those are two things that aren't changing anytime soon, although maybe in the long term they will. I don't think that it'll continue to just get more and more competitive forever. What goes up will eventually come down, I think, but this is the most competitive things have been in quite some time. Christian's asking, would you say that over the years the cost of law school would adjust? Of course, I still plan to go next year or so, albeit with more caution on my financial decision on where I attend. Impossible to say. Law schools are in a tough spot because, on the one hand, if they discount their tuition and they're tuition dependent, they are undermining their own revenue. On the other hand, if they keep the cost too high, they will also discourage folks from going. So they're in an impossible situation. We will see what happens. I do think that they will have to adjust to some extent, though, and I think that they will probably need to cut their overhead to some extent to allow themselves to operate with less tuition coming in. They can also get more creative in finding other additional sources of revenue, though, or taking on more international students, for example, assuming that the immigration situation allows them to do that. Eli's asking, do I do one-on-one consulting sessions that you have more questions? Yeah, I do. So I'm actually offering a free LSAT tutoring lesson for everybody watching this now or later. No obligation, totally free. You can book that free tutoring lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. It's a quick reference on everything logical reasoning and reading comprehension. You can grab that free cheat sheet at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. The link is below the video, pinned in the chat, in my bio as well. Happy to help out. Amalinda's asking, is it possible to retake the LSAT after submitting your application and then send in the updated one? Yeah, so you can actually. You can retake the LSAT and submit an update on your LSAT score as part of your letter of continued interest. And I think that not enough folks do that for scholarship reconsideration. Well worth doing. Sarah's asking, how about a mid-tier LSAT with a very high GPA? How about a very high LSAT with a very high GPA? You'll have better outcomes if you have better numbers. So in other words, I don't want you to settle for a moderate or mediocre LSAT if you think you're capable of doing better. If you can retake the LSAT and get even a couple points higher, it's going to do a lot to help you improve your odds of both getting in and also getting scholarship money. Noah's asking, how does admissions factor in your other LSAT scores that aren't your highest? I mean, they're context, but at the end of the day, they have no incentive to care because they are not evaluated based on anything other than your highest LSAT score on your record. If you have a high score and also a low score, the high score is what counts. If you have a single score, that single score is what counts. The highest score is what they report to the American Bar Association, which in turn is what they report, is in turn US News polls for inclusion in the law school rankings. And so while they will see all scores, they only have reason to consider the high score. And if you look at the data, that's what they do. Sarah's asking, would I need to write an addendum if I take the LSAT more than 2 times? No, you don't need to. In most cases, writing an addendum is optional. If you feel so moved to do so, if you feel like you've got to explain it, then by all means go ahead and write it. And law schools will tell you to write an addendum when in doubt just because they want to get rid of you. But ultimately, the high score is what counts. Now, if you took it 7 times, then sure, write an addendum. But if you took it 2, 3, even 4 times, you don't necessarily need to. If anything, sometimes writing an addendum just draws more attention to this thing that you want to explain away, and it's better to just let the numbers speak for themselves. Jake is asking, thoughts on taking the GRE rather than taking the LSAT? I'll say this. While a lot of law schools have gotten headlines for allowing routes to apply other than the LSAT, like, for example, the GRE, virtually nobody actually gets into law school with anything other than the LSAT. The GRE is really reserved for rare situations where you've got unicorn softs, like really incredible, mind-blowing experiences. But for the typical applicant, you want to have the LSAT. You want to show law schools that you're serious about law school. They're not just applying on a whim or for lack of a better option or doing it last minute. You want to show them that you've got what it takes to succeed in law school and also succeed on the bar exam. The reason the LSAT is considered a valid and reliable admission test is because it is correlated with first-year law school grades as well as bar passage rates. The GRE, in contrast, doesn't have the same demonstrated correlation. And law schools also reward you on the basis of your LSAT score to give you more scholarship money and also to accept you when they otherwise might not, because the higher your LSAT, the more you're going to help them raise their standing in the US News rankings. The GRE doesn't play that same role. Just scanning through for more questions here. Feel free to keep them coming. Eli says, multiple law schools asked me to retake the LSAT and for a better score to get off the wait list. If that's the case, then do it. No question in my mind. If a law school has asked you to do something, then you should do that thing. If it'll help you get off the wait list, namely retake the LSAT for a higher score, then by all means, you know the work ahead of you, so just go ahead and retake the LSAT. You can retake it in August and still apply to law school. Typically, people will retake the LSAT in April or June to get off a wait list. August is pretty late. You'd be starting law school a couple weeks late, so I can't say I've heard about that in particular. But in general, taking the LSAT to get off a wait list is a good move. Jace asks, how many times can I take the LSAT and does it matter when? I'm a rising sophomore with a 3.6 GPA. So if you are a rising sophomore, meaning that you're entering sophomore year this fall, you're way ahead of schedule, you're early. And I wouldn't think you need to start studying for the LSAT now. Take a year, keep focusing on your GPA. A 3.6 is lower than it could be. I'd want you to get your GPA up before you think about the LSAT. The LSAT's not going anywhere. You could take it in a year and still be early. Now, to your question, LSAC has moderated the retake limits. They're not as severe as they used to be. You could take the LSAT 5 times in 5 years. You could take it 7 times for life, and if you get a 180, you can't take it again. But other than that, you're good. And so my thought is focus on the GPA, get your grades up. Sometimes it's a good idea to take some summer classes at a local community college to get some easy A's and help boost up your GPA. But circle back in a year and then focus on the LSAT. Zah's asking, when should you start studying if you're in college? So related question here. I'd say for most folks, probably starting in your junior year is early and totally fine. If you're a freshman in college, if you're a sophomore in college, if you're a high school student, I know some of you are out there, you're early. Focus on college, focusing on your classes, your grades, exploring whether law school is truly what you want to do. LSAT and law school aren't going anywhere, but maintaining a high GPA will help you keep your options open. Sermon's asking, if I finish college with a 3.8 GPA, but I get a 171 LSAT, would my GPA affect it? I mean, your GPA always affects things for better or worse. In your case, a 3.8 GPA is good. A 171 LSAT is also good. Those are both on the lower end for top 14 law schools specifically, but other than that, they're pretty respectable and they'll get you into some good law schools. If you can bump those numbers up a little bit, you'll be that much better off to get into more of the T14, but you're in a pretty good position. Of course, not everybody wants to go to a T14. I get that. I'm just saying that more as a proxy for like the best possible outcomes. Those numbers, if you could get them up a little bit, will also get you more scholarship money from slightly lower ranked law schools outside the T14 and even in the top 50. Jack's asking or commenting, it's still so subjective. I had a 3.6 GPA and a 160 LSAT, and I got rejected by New York law, LOL. Okay, so I don't know that it's that subjective. I mean, I'm not saying that it's always entirely numbers driven. Softs can play a role in some cases. I don't know the stats for New York law specifically, if you mean New York Law School. Anyone can easily look those up by Googling the ABA 509 report, though. But I'd be curious to know if your numbers were above their median, below the median, on target with the median, and then if your softs or work experience were good, bad, neutral, for example. And I'd be curious if that played some role. You also can't get one-itis on any single individual school because they have their idiosyncrasies. Things change year by year, and also things are always getting more competitive. I would always apply to a wide range of law schools, typically at least 15, 20, just so that you're not subject to the whims of any individual or law school's unique cycle. Scanning through for other questions here. Jazzy says, my GPA is only a 3.9 and a 173 LSAT. You think Burke's going to hit me back? I assume only is a joke there because those numbers are pretty good. You've got a shot at Berkeley if that's what you're asking. But again, I wouldn't over-index on any one specific school. I would blanket the T14 with those numbers and see what you get back from them. Elizabeth says, I have a 3.0 GPA weighted, and I'm in my third week of studying. It's just not clicking for me. When will it click? And why is it so different from my undergraduate legal studies? Yeah, so what most people don't realize is that the LSAT is not like anything you studied in college before. It's a lot more rigorous, a lot less forgiving, a lot more precise. You can't BS your way through the LSAT like you can in some humanities classes. And I say this as someone who majored in the humanities. I majored in poli-sci, but I also took a lot of other classes in sociology, for example, where, to be frank, there were a lot of easy A's. The LSAT doesn't play. And to your question of when it's going to click, I can't personally say when it's going to click. If you're just studying with self-study resources, books, videos, ChatGPT, the problem is that you don't know what you don't know. And so I recommend getting some personalized support, some personalized feedback. Once we add that into the mix, there's usually a pretty quick score boost, meaning there's going to be a lot of low-hanging fruit, because when you're studying on your own, you don't know what you don't know. So if you want to talk through what a more personalized program could look like to help you get unstuck, since you mentioned it's not clicking for you, next best steps would be book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me. The link to book that free lesson is unpluggedprep.com/start. You can also grab my free LSAT cheat sheet. It's a PDF download. You can get it right now at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. It's a quick reference on everything logical reasoning and reading comp, all the different sections, all the different question types. During the free tutoring lesson, we look at where you're currently scoring, what your goal score is, what your time frame is, and then we help you craft a plan to get from your goal score, your current score, to your goal score between now and your target LSAT test date. If you're taking the LSAT in August or September, we'll take a more intensive boot camp style approach with live coaching a couple times a week. If you're taking the LSAT in October, November, January, February, we'll take a more slow and steady approach. We always personalize the program and the study plan to the individual student, whether you're working or you're in school, you have family obligations. All that can, of course, play a role in what your study plan should look like. We also want to build some days off into your study plan so that you don't burn out. So if you want to talk through what your plan could look like, book the free tutoring lesson with me. And if you're not ready for that yet, grab the free cheat sheet, no obligation. Download links are in my bio and below the video on YouTube as well. Jazzy asks, would becoming student government president boost my softs? I took my LSAT junior year going into senior year. I mean, yeah, being student government president would definitely be a major boost to your softs. I mean, law schools want the kind of folks who could potentially become future politicians. So yeah, I mean, definitely go for that if you feel inclined to do so. Not saying it would offset low numbers, but it could be icing on top, icing on top. So yeah, go for it. Good luck. T asks, what about the reverse? 3.4 undergraduate GPA, 2 graduate degrees over a 3.0 GPA, and a 150 LSAT. So you've got a 3.4 undergraduate GPA, 150 LSAT. The graduate degrees don't really play a role. Law schools don't consider graduate level degrees. They only look at your undergraduate degree. So 3.4 GPA, 150 LSAT, I'll be frank, those numbers are fairly low just because of rampant grade inflation. There's also a lot of LSAT score inflation as well. And a 150 LSAT and a 3.4 GPA are both below the median in general. And so you're going to want to retake the LSAT. You can't redo undergrad at this point, but you can retake the LSAT. And if you can get your LSAT up 10, 15 points, you'll be in a radically better position. Maya's asking, is a master's degree considered a soft? Effectively, yeah, because they're not crunching your master's degree GPA in the numbers. Your LSAC calculated GPA only takes into consideration your undergraduate GPA. While they'll see your master's GPA, they'll see the master's degree, it doesn't play a role in the same way. So yeah, it becomes like a soft. Jazzy asks, what are the best softs? Good question. I mean, I think the best softs are the unicorn softs. A unicorn soft being a soft that is mind-blowing, unique, rare, super impressive. It's the sort of thing that is so impressive that they will not have seen few, if any, other people ever having done something like that before. So by definition, it's going to stand out because it's unique, and you can't even imagine how someone ended up getting into that position. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Cal Newport. He's written a series of books on academia and succeeding as a student. One of them called, I think, something like How to Be a High School Superstar. And he describes in that book the idea of the failed simulation effect, the idea being that someone cannot imagine how you would have achieved that result or achieved that goal or achieved that impressive thing. They can't simulate or put themselves in your position. And so you want to think through, how could I get to that place? I actually did something like that myself. I had a unicorn soft when it came to applying to college for undergrad that I could share in case this helps. I can't think of a better way to talk about unicorn stuff than that. I actually, as a high school student, I was super interested in politics. I ended up majoring in poli-sci in college, as I mentioned earlier. And so I ended up in this place where I was going to actual United Nations conferences as a non-governmental organization delegate advocating for sustainable development policies. When I was in high school as a junior and as a senior in high school at the age of like 15, 16 years old. And I got there in a really roundabout, unexpected way. I just basically applied to a bunch of NGOs, nonprofits, asking for internships as a high school student. And one of them offered me that opportunity. I wasn't trying to do it, didn't even know that opportunity existed. And I ended up through serendipity, through luck, through chance, getting to go to these conferences. And so I suspect that part of how I got into Columbia for undergrad, which is where I ended up going, was because of those softs. Those were unicorn softs, meaning that undergrad admissions hadn't ever seen anything like that before, and so they were impressed by it. And I knew how I got there, and I didn't think it was that impressive, but it was just a matter of getting into that situation. And so if you can invite luck, serendipity, chance into your life by taking on new opportunities, exploring things, applying for things, reaching out to people, hopefully you can end up in a similar place. Not saying you can do it deliberately, but if you just invite opportunities, you'll never know what's going to come your way. And so if you can go down an unbeaten path, an untrodden path, a path that few others have gone, maybe you'll end up with a unicorn soft as well. I see Jazzy saying, I've been super involved with the DNC and local Denver politics and hold a few board seats at 20. That sounds pretty impressive to me. I mean, I guess the question is, like, you're 20 years old, you're doing these impressive things, getting involved in real politics. How many other 20-year-olds are doing that? Are you in a world where you're one of a kind, where you're standing out and you're a clear go-getter, wise beyond your years, ambitious beyond your years? If so, that may get you into a pretty cool place where you're going to stand out and have that unicorn soft you can apply with. You don't want to be another cookie cutter applicant doing the same things everybody else does. And so law schools, as you can imagine, they've seen a lot of paralegals applying to law school. If you're yet the 10,000th paralegal that cycle, not going to stand out the same way. In contrast, if you are getting a local government position where you're doing real concrete work, that's going to stand out. By the way, folks, for those of you just joining, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. If you find this helpful, please spread the word. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these lives, and the algorithm doesn't really boost them because they can't run ads during them. So I do appreciate your support, spreading the word, sharing this on your TikTok, sharing this to your socials, to any pre-law societies you're part of, Facebook groups, Discords, subreddits. The more this grows, the more I'll expand this over time. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, 2 Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. I'll see you all then. In the meantime, all the best and take care.